Hello, everybody. I am back with a new comic book review, and today I will be covering one of the most pivotal Batman stories of all time. It's like the biggest point in Batman's history that is just like set in stone. There's always at least that one thing in a comic book character's history that a lot of people can point to and say, like, yeah, that changed the dynamic for this character moving forward. The same way, other moments that I will be bringing up in throughout this review. But before I continue, please like and subscribe, smash that like button, share this with your friends. Let me know, what is your favorite Batman comic? Now, I'll be covering Knightfall, but I'm also going to include Vengeance of Bane, which is leading into Knightfall. Rather than making a whole separate story altogether, I figured I might as well just kind of roll it into this, because there'll be the introduction of this brand new character that we will come to know as Bane. Now, the first time I actually saw Bane in anything was in the Batman the Animated Series episode. But I did not even know how hugely important this character was until much later. Now, as a kid, I had a few comic books that tied into Knightfall, but I didn't know the complete story. Now, this is the first time I actually read the entire story from back to front. But, growing up, I learned through osmosis about the story in general and, what came about, this, that, and the third. So, yeah, it's a very crucial moment where, of course, if you're not familiar, Bane ends up breaking Batman's back. But he did it he was one of the rare few people that was able to take down Batman, albeit not permanently, but in a very significant way that kind of changed the character forever. And also, around this time, at least a little while prior to Knightfall ever coming out, Superman will be dying by Doomsday, and that changed that character forever, because that's the most pivotal moment of Superman's superhero career, where this giant monster Prima's had this long dragged out slug out in Metropolis before they end up killing each other. But of course, Superman was in a healing coma, but it was a significant thing because even back then, Superman was always Superman. Nobody was able to take this guy down. He was supposed to be the hero of all heroes, and it was all over. I'm pretty sure you can look this up. It was all over news outlets and everything like that. People were freaking out. Even people who weren't even Superman or comic book, I won't say Superman fans, but they weren't comic book, consistent readers. So it's oh my God, they actually, killed Superman in the comics, and the death of Superman, flew off the shelves is so gangbusters, because it's they actually killed off one of the most important characters in fictional history. And he was dead for a mighty long time. At least a year, if I recall correctly. But then eventually they brought him back. But then not too long after, Batman ends up being temporarily paralyzed by this this newcomer. So yeah, but we'll get into the origin story of Bane right now. So I got like a nice, handful of slides, so we'll be like going through quite a bit. So we are in this, island of Santa Prisca, where Bane was born and grew up, where it's pretty much like a prison island, where there's like civil war and unrest and everything like that, and the general who's running things ends up convicting one of the women on the other end, who was married to this kind of rebel leader or rebel fighter, not sure. And of course she was pregnant, but they didn't really care about human rights or anything like that. As a matter of fact, they said like, oh, if the baby turns out to be a boy, then that baby will inherit the father's punishment and jail time, which would have been life. And of course, the woman gave birth to a boy. Never know the boy's real name, but they just, he was, eventually would be dubbed Bane, but we'll get to that soon. But we meet this, very frail dude named Zombie. He's pretty much like the, janitor in one part of the prison, who was pretty much like looking after the mom and the kid. But because of living conditions of the place and the fact that she got little to no son, she kind of like just grew super frail, unhealthy, and then ultimately she ended up passing away. And of course there's physicians there, but they really weren't that much help or cared all that much. Because, they're mostly people in this prison are almost like the worst of the worst kind of people. So care is like, not, it's pretty much like Guantanamo Bay. There's not much care to go around. Then once the kid passed away, then the general, or the warden, I should say, he got like a general suit, but he then decided to move this, because, Bane at this point is like, 7, 8, something like that. Small child. And it's going to be a while before he even learns how to read, let alone like understand, what's going on around him. Of course, he seen people getting shanked and all this other stuff. Then he's getting moved into like a cell near this fat dude who clearly has ill intentions for that kid. They're going to leave it at that. But this young kid has some protection, because not only we had like Zombie, who took care of him when he was like a small baby up to this point, and of course he's not in this part of the wing, so he can't monitor things. But I guess he had extra help with this bruiser named Trog, who physically defended this small boy. But the tussle ends up knocking the kid over. He ends up falling, hitting his head on the ground. It has this vision, which is kind of weird, that he almost had like a darn pitch perfect vision of his would-be adult self. Almost, without the mask, almost the exact look. And like, no, can you honestly say that, by 8 to 10 years old, you know exactly what you will look like in your adulthood? It's like, I don't know. And this is written by Chuck Dixon and Joe Moench. And there's some, fair bit of criticism I want to address through Knightfall, but I'll get to that soon. But uh, but they could have like make this, like a silhouette or some kind of like, just like a, because come across like, oh, he's like a, like a physical being made of light, but he could have just made just like a ball of light with a gruff voice or something like that of like, I'm you in the future thing. But no, I know it's nitpicky, but it's kind of weird. But I guess you want to give the readers like a good, mind's eye of what's going on in this kid's head. But he's instructing the kid like you will be, and this is very confusing too, because he's warning this kid there's a bat demon that you will have to take down to prove yourself. Prepare yourself, and it's kind of instilling the fear of this bat. It's very like the flip effect of how Bruce became Batman, because it is, his fear of bats, but Bane kind of took it in a different way to like his need to overcome, and and the whole thing about like challenge, and need to best people, whatever. So the kid wakes up, and now he has a new purpose. It's pretty much like leaving behind the child and being baptized in blood, which he technically is. He ends up making a shiv and killing the guy who was about to abuse him. And literally, like, the guards and the warden see this dude laying in, like, near the corpse of this dude. And it's like, my God, he's like a Bane, how they put it, like, I will not have such an abomination in this prison. He's a Bane to everything holy. And it's like, that's where he gets the name, Bane. So he literally is baptized in blood. And so he's put into solitary confinement, which the warden hopes that this kid will eventually just die. Because they just leave him in there for like at least several years. Figure that, most people I throw in here ends up, dying of starvation or whatnot. Plus, there's also low tide. The way the solitary confinement is set up in this prison, it's like in a particular part of the, as of a room, particular part of the building that at certain points at night it gets flooded by the rising tides, and there's crabs and rats and stuff like that. And of course, there's like a little ceiling area with bars so he can breathe and everything like that. But he manages to power through all this. He ends up like, exercising, doing like crazy amount of push-ups, sit-ups, everything like that. He is also greeted by this bird with a letter coming from another future ally of his named Bird, who happens to be a Gothamite who was sent to Santa Prisca. Don't know why they sent him all the way to this island rather than just send him to Blackgate, but that part is also kind of weird. But he is a kind of a crooked lawyer that got busted and somehow got sent here. But he ends up befriending Bane and, teaching him how to read. And then, of course, Bane quickly started to become very learned, reading everything he can get his hands on in that prison, learning about, like, mathematics, strategy, history, philosophy. He just soaking up everything he can. So he trained his mind as well as his body. So now he's pretty much like in his 20s at this point. And of course, now in the prison, he's hailed as a hero because now it's like Warden looks like a fool because this guy is supposed to die, but he managed to not only survive, but he's, stronger, and everybody's hailing him as a hero. And now they see him as like the real leader of this prison and not this warden, with of course ticking him off. But we also come to understanding that this warden has been supplying these scientists certain inmates for experimentation for this formula, at least like trying to make super soldiers essentially, which turns out to be the chemical that we will know to be venom, which makes Bane a strong, capable fighter. He's already a capable fighter, but just also increase his strength almost tenfold. Bane ends up coming up with a plan with him and the trio of dudes that been helping him out as he grew up in this prison. So they set up a plan. He, trained, his, heart to slow down at a certain pace where it seems like he's dead. And therefore they take his body to be thrown out into the waters where the sharks are. But he ends up not only fending off those sharks, but he makes his way back in the surface, get his 3 cohorts. But before they go, they end up like taking the warden, go into the helicopter, and toss him into the shark-infested waters before they make their way to Gotham. So he has a plan in place to take down this Batman, which, by the way, Bird ends up telling him about this legend, because where he's from, like anybody, gets all their ill-begotten gains from Gotham. It's like, it's probably the biggest crime hub. And like, Bane asks like, who's the biggest, person there? And Bird's like, it depends on who you ask, because there's a lot of costume villains there, and there's a couple of mob bosses, and of course there's the police. But the top dog there is this, person, this vigilante named Batman, and this kind of triggers something in Bane's like, oh, must be the Bat Demon from my nightmares. So we're going to go to Gotham, and I'm going to challenge this Batman, and I will break him and then take over the city as my prize. And also, Zombie ends up, stealing a couple of samples of the Venom formula before they make their escape. And he knows a bit about chemistry, so he able to synthesize more venom for Bane, which he incorporates into these tubes, a part of his luchador type of costume, so he looks like the Bane that we know. Once he gets to Gotham, he starts going after the crime bosses that turned against Bird, who more than likely are the ones who sent him to, got him sent to Santa Prisca. So Bane ends up talking to the boss, who called like Metal Nose or something like that. It's kind of like a gimmicky villain that, kind of like the Batman versus Predator. People that will end up being dead that you won't care about or miss. Not anybody critically important to the overall Batman mythos like Poison Ivy or somebody. And the guy was like, "Oh, Bird, it's like good to see you, pal. It's been a long time." That took like, "Oh, I didn't expect to see you here. I see you made some friends." And Bane asks like, "Where do I find this Batman?" And of course, the Metal Nose is telling Bane's like, "Oh, what? Like, oh, Do you got some kind of gimmick or something? Like, trust me, I understand. You can't make it in this city without having some kind of gimmick. And Batman doesn't really show up unless you really start shaking some things up a bit. So Bane, I was like, okay. He ends up killing this guy and a lot of his men, taking over his little spot. So he have some kind of base of operations, basically. But then he started to make a plan. He knows, because this is, very smart. Bane, unlike Batman and Robin, which they kind of did butcher the character significantly, and Dark Knight Rises got close to, but not totally perfect, because Nolan didn't want to, incorporate too much of the fantastical from the comics, like actual chemical formula known as venom, but maybe some kind of pain suppressant or whatever thing he used for his version of Bane. But hopefully James Gunn will actually, in some point in the future, make a comic accurate Bane. But Bane is very intelligent. He knows that, okay, I cannot take this guy head on because those who tried end up failing. So I want to study him, learn about his movements, his mindset, before I put him through his paces, before I challenge him. And it's handled very smart. So he's been, for a good portion of this event, is just Bane watching from the shadows and manipulating certain situations for Batman to have to deal with. And Batman's already going through some stuff as of lately. And as a matter of fact, it's not too long after the death of Jason Todd that his current Robin is Tim Drake, who fairly recently, not too recently, but fairly recently became his new Robin. So now it's not exactly he gotten over the whole Jason Todd situation. But yeah, he's going through some stuff. So it doesn't help with, Bane, throwing his machinations at him. Also, I want to make a point. I, love this type of art. And it's like really brings me back a bit when, reading comics in like the 90s. It's something about this particular art, this art that I just gravitate to. I know I say that from time to time, but it's just certain arts that really like, okay, this is, the type of shading and the penciling and just like the, subtle use of the colors, everything like that just kind of works and it pops in all the right ways. Or I want to say pops, more like just, finely tuned. Nothing too exaggerating of portions of facial features. So Bane's watching Batman taking down some gangsters, and matter of fact, for some reason, I'm not sure why, but they drew the Three Stooges as one of this crime boss's henchmen, just to watch Bane kill these three, because he's lurking in the shadows. And like, you merely adopted the darkness. I was born in it. Have to do it. I had to do it at least once. Otherwise, it would bother me if I didn't. But then you also got to do the, the Hispanic type of tone, like, you now have my permission to die. That was terrible. But it's like, I'll teach you to be truly invisible. So, while Batman's trying to take down, some of the punks, unbeknownst to him, Bane is in the shadows taking out some other folks, killing them, because he doesn't want anybody else coming after his target. And then Batman ends up getting, some somewhat FaceTime. Is dark in his building, and he tells him you will know my name and you will scream it. My name is Bane. And Bane also notices something unique about Batman, the fact that he does not kill, which kind of uh uh challenged what he initially thought growing up, like he's supposed to be some kind of bat demon that probably takes down his enemies permanently like he would. But the fact that, oh, you won't break the Sixth Amendment, thou shalt not kill kind of situation. It's kind of funny. But it's like, today's not your day to die. So he scurries off. But Batman had this kind of funny little retort to him when Bane's like, I will, like, basically take you down. And Batman's like, yeah, get in line. And of course, Batman is completely like, because this is like at least a handful of years of him being Batman. And of course, Dick Grayson's already Nightwing at this point. He shows up a little bit through this event. So I don't know. It's like, it should be maybe like, 10 years into the game. Maybe. So it's like, Batman has like a, handful of rogues at this point, which we will see. So he's been in the game long enough. So it's like nobody really, they put, the villains put him through his paces, especially Joker, but nobody really posed like a legitimate challenge to Batman. So of course he feels a little cocky. I wouldn't say cocky, but maybe just confident, but some might argue overconfident, because at this point in time, Batman is not familiar with Bane. So he's like, yeah, dude, you got muscles. Don't get ahead of yourself, because I took down bigger dudes like you all the time. They all tasted the heel of my boot. But Bruce is going to be in for a very rude awakening, unfortunately. So we're going to move on to the next slide. So excuse me for a bit. But that's pretty much like wrapping up Vengeance of Bane, Bane's origin story. So now we're really into Knightfall. And Batman right now is going to be dealing with probably like a gauntlet of villains leading up to essentially like the final boss with Bane. Some orchestrated by Bane, some not, like Black Mask or Roman Sionis, who, if you're not familiar, is like a gangster, but he used to be a rich kid like Bruce. But unlike Bruce, his parents didn't die from some kind of tragedy or anything like that. But he's greedy, he's power hungry, also kind of sick in the head. He's kind of like a sadist, in a lot of interpretations. So he ends up orchestrating the death of his own parents so he can inherit their wealth. He turns into some kind of like conglomerate for fragrances and things like that, but it didn't turn out so well. And then the Wayne Foundation ends up buying out, the Sionis company. So he ends up having a grudge against not only the rich elite, but also with Bruce himself. So it's not that too dissimilar to, Oswald Cobblepot. So if you want to know why he's wearing a black mask, because like his part of his origin story is where like a battle with he took remnants. He carved like a piece of his father's wooden casket, and turned it into some kind of mask to wear. And it was like a fire happened while he's battling with Batman. It you know, singe his face or something like that is in the shape of the, like the mask. So it's like, a lot of cases the mask is like permanently on his face. But in a sense, I mean, you can look it up, but in a sense, that's, the gist of how he became known as the Black Mask. So now he's running this, little criminal empire, at least a little, kind of like a mob boss anyway. So he's obsessed with mask. So he has his goons, each wearing a different type of mask. Every time they're rolling with him, they always have to have a mask on. There's no excuses. So Black Mask making a play to take down 3 higher ups at the Wayne Foundation, like Lucius Fox, which would be like the last dude, but then there's gonna be a couple of others. While behind the scenes, while some stuff going on, Batman Bruce is is pretty much like getting burnout, where it's like he's been Batmaning for a very long time at this point. Lord knows how many times he actually took the time to, take a break from Batman stuff, because he's so driven. He probably cannot help but keep doing it and not taking some time away from it, at least not without it being forced on him or circumstances cause him to like be laid up for a while or whatever the case may be. He never, by his own volition, actually like taking some me time away from doing Batman stuff, because he figures like, Gotham would go into hell in a handbasket if he ain't, dousing out fires every night. So doing it as long as he has, with, minimum amount of breaks, outside of maybe after he's done from one night, he goes home, rest, and, recoup, or doing Bruce Wayne stuff here and there, or dealing with Justice League stuff here and there. He's not really like, taking a break from all that stuff. So now he's, overly exhausted at this point, and it seems like he can't really like sit down. He's like running on fumes and ragged, but he's not he's refusing to like, just deal with him. While that is going on, Jim Gordon just recently married to this woman named Sarah. Never familiar with this chick, because in the current comics, not married at all. So this relationship definitely did not last. But she has a chip on her shoulder when it comes to vigilante. But more specifically, Batman, because I guess in some, small ways, she's kind of jealous that, Jim's having like more time with Batman than he is with her. And the fact that she sees Jim as like one of the greatest detectives and all around stand-up person that she really respects and admires. But it's kind of like, the joke in Lego Batman movie, where he just like, just sign the signal, Batman will take care of it. It's kind of like, how like the Lego Batman movie kind of laid into that joke, where he seems like he can't like make a move without like consulting with Batman, or his over-reliance. I don't want to call it over-reliance, but he definitely counts on Batman to deal with certain things that he knows regular cops cannot deal with, because it's like, different level of crime in Gotham than other cities have to normally deal with. But she's just like, apparently just always get into kind of shouting matches with him about it. But, she is really like, there's going to be certain things that I kind of wish, which I'll bring up along the way, but I wish the writers would kind of like leave out or truncate, because they don't overall feed into the main crux of the story. It seems like not filler, but like tangents that we don't need to be on. And she's one of the tangents that I really do not care. But it's kind of like, I guess you can say, adds to like the constant being, Batman being pulled in all ends, because now like she's putting like a rift between Jim and Batman needlessly, because it's like, Jim's kind of questioning certain things with Batman, where it's like it wasn't an issue with our relationship before, but now is an issue now because the girl's all in your freaking ear because she's butthurt, about our working together. So it's that's that wedge going on. So yeah, we gotta see the Roman Sionis put this, a lot of his, little makeup brands caused disfigurement because they weren't properly, made, or the formula was off or something like that, which caused, mutilation of the skin or the face in this particular case. So that's how he used to take down his would-be targets. So Bruce is determined to like, because eventually, like, well, Bane will eventually break out a lot of inmates of Arkham, but we haven't gotten to that part yet. But already Bruce is like, he knows he needs to rest, and he needs to see somebody about his condition, because he's not like, in top form right now. And he went to see a physician, but nothing physically wrong with him, but it's just more psychological and something internal that he needs to wrestle with. So he gets recommended to this woman named Sandra Kill-Solving, which we'll get to pretty soon. But he cannot stop himself from the whole Batman mission, where he's like, okay, Roman Sionis is on the street right now. I can't like stop and deal with this whole thing in my head, because I got this. This is more important right now. And he's running stuff ragged. It's all inconsequential, but compared to the overall mission. So he is undercover as this new thug named. Well, he doesn't like, I don't have a name. This works that way. So they give him, like a nickname, because they give him like a skeleton mask. They call him like Bones or something like that, or Skullface. They call him Skullface, and he follows along with crew, because Roman Sionis is like pretty much committing arson to a lot of Wayne-owned businesses, which is also causing him like further stress, because now he has to deal with that, and with the managers who was running the place, and they all running away, want to leave, get bought out, because they feel like they're being targeted, and they don't feel safe. There's a lot of stuff going on in terms of his personal life as well as his Batman life. So none of that's helping right now. But he also got Robin waiting in the wings, and many people, starting with him, has been telling Bruce, you need to slow down. Are you sure you don't want me to, to handle this while you just rest up a little while? He's like, no, I got this. Don't worry about it. And he's kind of biting Alfred and his head off. Even like down the line, Bullock points it out. Like people are taking notice, and as it gets worse, a lot of people are gonna start taking notice about the way Batman moves. He seems a little sluggish. He seems like out of sorts. And it's like, dude, you need to probably take a beat, because you don't look so good. It's like obvious. It's starting to get more obvious as the story goes on. But they put a stop to one of the arson jobs. But eventually, Roman decides to kidnap Lucius Fox. And of course, he's there under the disguise of Skullface. But he whispers to Lucius, like, it's me, Bruce. Don't worry, I'll get you out of here. And this is a spot where you see like Bruce is like Batman's like going back and forth to the gym because he like concerned that like Bruce is not like or Batman's not letting him clued in on certain things. He's just like you never used to question me before. Like don't question me now. Like you trust me to handle things. I'll let you know when to make the bust. Once because he wants to not only get Roman Sionis, but he needs to get his entire crew all at once just to get them off the street. Because, aside from them, things are seemingly decent in Gotham. So that way he can put his focus, at least temporarily, into trying to deal with whatever he's dealing with. But he can't do that because he's too concerned about getting Roman. But once him and Tim's plan comes together, because he has Roman waiting in the wings a lot in this story, instead of involving him because they're supposed to be partners. And of course Tim is not necessarily new at this. Let's say he's been Robin for maybe like at most 2 years at this point, at most. So he's fairly skilled, and he should know the typical protocols of how to deal with certain things. Like, hey, we're supposed to be a team. Like, don't you trust me? Things of that sort. But it's like Bruce is like, do as I say. Wait back. You'll know when to make you move when it happens, kind of thing. It's not like keeping people in the loop. And he's like, all the stuff he's struggling with, he is not going to be open about that with Tim, let alone Alfred. And even though Alfred kind of knows better, but Alfred doesn't like, I think modern day comics, or at least, Batman comics in the past handful of years have probably since maybe New 52 up until fairly recently, where Alfred isn't afraid to challenge Bruce. He's not intimidated by this whole gruff posterior that others might feel like that might cower to. There's very few people that is really that intimidated by Batman. I think like it's Alfred, Nightwing, Catwoman, Talia, Superman, and Wonder Woman is probably just those particular people that isn't like that really, who knows him so intimately that they're not like, let that whole like gruff exterior like deter them when they see something like that, or saying something that Bruce needs to desperately hear. And Alfred, if it was written today, would have forced Bruce to take a beat. Or, and there's been cases where he kind of slipped stuff in Bruce's food or drink to help him, like slipping him Nyquil or something like that, just to get him to go get some sleep. When he refused to just do so. But anyway, things start, like coming about. The cops, thanks to Tim, are getting all the thugs that are waiting for Black Mass to give them the orders about taking down another building. Cops raid the place. They're getting captured. But while Batman's dealing with Tattoo, Black Mass's right hand, who I'm pretty sure was in the first Suicide Squad movie played by Common. I think that's what's been like Tattoo. Because when I heard the name, I was like, ain't that the character that Common played in that movie? But anyway, while Batman's dealing with this dude who's actually a legit fighter, once Batman eventually took him down, Black Mass made his escape and kind of switched. And, well, I guess he long since made his escape because the guy that we thought was Black Mass was a completely different person wearing like the Black Mass outfit. So Black Mass is on the loose somewhere. We never see him again in this event. But now Batman is butthurt because the fact that I didn't want to just get his crew, I wanted him as well. Now he just sees it as a complete failure. So he's letting that hang over his head now. And that adds further to the stress because he's gung-ho about finding Black Mass and that's foreseeable issues while he's dealing with other, know nothing one-off bad guys. With one of them with a ridiculous costume. This guy, Needlehead or something like that. Honestly, the most ridiculous looking costume I've ever seen in a comic book in my entire life. That is incredibly stupid. It's like, because we will meet up with, because currently right now, in like we have Jean-Paul Valley, who we know to be Azrael, in like a completely separate story, where we are first introduced with the Azrael character and the Order of Saint Dumas, who creates these Azrael type of monikers for certain sleeper agents type of people. And the Azrael that that was working with them turns out to be John Paul Valley's father, who had the order orchestrate to get, like a supplement stuff, hypnosis, use hypnosis to get certain, information in his young son's mind. So when he comes of age, he will be able to be, it's kind of like a sleeper agent. He will just suddenly know how to fight and do all sorts of things that he wouldn't realize he was able to do. That kind of thing. And of course, it's kind of spoiler for like a separate story altogether. Maybe in the future we'll get to it. But after tangling with the Saint Dumas, they see John Paul Valley as like a victim, so they kind of like keep tabs on him, which eventually they bring him on to the fold, and Batman feels like, hey, okay, we can't do anything or stop like the subtle programming by this order. So what we can do is possibly curve that by training him in my ways, so when it comes out, hopefully he can use it for good. It's kind of like if you watch the TV show Dexter, where like the cop dad knows that, or at least knows, but has like a gut feeling that this boy might grow up to be a serial killer. And I love this kid. It's not his fault. So I will at least try to curve that, so at least aim it. So I'll teach him how to kill bad people, so that way he won't go after any innocent people. So maybe he has, something to aim at to control that dark side. So in a way, that's what Batman's trying to do with John Paul Valley. At this point, he kind of looks like a nerd, kind of like a, lady in the 70s, like, the member of Hanson or something like that with nerd glasses. But eventually he cut all that off. Now he looks like this is like a man's man kind of attitude, appearance. And his proto costume, like training costume, is took some kind of homage to this Needlehead costume except there's no spikes to it. So that's why I make the whole point is like a perfect time to bring up John Paul Valley, because his little training outfit is based off of this stupid Needlehead outfit. You'll see it soon. But anyway, Needlehead just shows up because he's asking these, CD bars where the criminal element is hanging out, where's Black Mass? And nobody want to answer. So he swings his stupid head around to hit some people with like a spiky thing. He could have just had like a whip or mace or something. But this is like needlessly unnecessary of an outfit. It's pretty much like a gimp suit. Don't know what's the thought process behind all this. And of course, at the time, while Bruce is just pushing himself too hard, he's literally not even caring the fact that he got like a nosebleed just pouring. And of course, Alfred is like taking the assertiveness, and it's like, because he used to wipe this little jerk's butt when he was like a baby, and he's giving him lip, and it's like, it's like, I got this, Alfred. I don't need anybody. Just let me work. And it's like, Alfred of today, or at least in modern times, maybe put up with that maybe once. I was like, okay, I understand, you're dealing with Black Mass and these arsons, but you got the bulk of his crew. He's on the run. He's pretty much stopped. So I'm not trying to hear it. Take your ass to bed, get some sleep, get some medical attention so you can be tip-top shape, so you can deal with any future crimes, because you're looking like crap. And it's just like, but of course, he's just putting out, or at least not putting up with, but he's just taking it, and it's like, oh, I guess he knows what he's doing. Not like, accepting it like he knows what he's doing, but he's just like, let him do what he do, or something like that. It's like, no, you clearly are out of it, man. But then he comes across Needlehead, realizing, oh, he's not like a new vigilante trying to stop Black Mass. He want to work for Black Mass, so he ends up taking him out. But in the process, he gets a little torn up. So now he's kind of like, okay, I got to get some rest. I was barely even able to get out of that fight with a guy that I would have, any other day, I would have knocked it out in a single punch. But this is kind of pathetic. So he ends up going home and finally getting some rest and trying to seek some kind of like psychological help, because he is kind of like pushed too far. And, in his, personal hangups, he's kind of biting people's heads off and pushing certain people away, like, chastising Tim for like wearing a costume upstairs, because even though the blinds are closed, it's irrelevant to him. It's like, we have this rule: do not wear costumes outside of the cave in the house, because you never know who comes over or whatever, which is an understandable rule, but he's kind of like a dick about it, which ironically Alfred ends up chastising him in later issues when he literally comes home slumped in his chair in his bedroom, and Alfred ends up chastising him like, you dare give Master Tim all that gruff about wearing a costume in the kitchen, and here you are wearing a full-on costume slumped over in a chair in your bedroom. So like, you definitely just, need to give an apology to Tim. And of course, like, Batman has to deal with this, crazy woman, little personal hangouts, like, because now there's a hit put out on Jim Gordon, and she kind of blames Batman because he's the one that's working with him. So they figure like they could probably get to you by getting to him. So, of course, Gordon is like, doesn't want to put anybody in danger, so he goes out to try to find this will-be assassin and deal with him personally, rather than just waiting, for him. But thanks to Sarah's call, trying to get him to answer the phone, he bends over to pick up the phone, just avoiding the bullet meant for him. He nicked his side of his head, but he's alive. And it's the first time this guy missed anything, but Batman shows up and took this guy down. So there's certain little moments in this thing. Like I said, there's some stuff that needs to be truncated. I don't think we need too much of these little side plots all that much. Okay, now I'm going off to the next group of slides. We got another little story about this young kid who will be known as the General, which I don't think we ever see this kind of character again in DC Comics since then, because this is the first time I ever heard of a character like this. They kind of like, throwing in certain. Here's the thing. Eventually, Bane will end up causing like a massive Arkham breakout, and this kind of Batman dealing with all these little one-off, know-nothing bad guys. You could have just had it be the more well-known villains for him to deal with, rather than wasting, paper on characters that's like, eh. But I get it to some extent. But I figure like there's so many other Batman roles that kind of fit the role perfectly to get your point across. But anyway, I was going to just call the kid the General because I didn't, he never mentions his actual name, but he just takes the moniker of the General. This little kid who got sent to join the army, but he ends up leaving and burning down the entire like little boot camp or whatever. But before all that, because clearly this kid has some kind of psychological problems, he reads all these books on military strategy. He kind of looks up to Napoleon as like, I guess, like an idol. He got this little figurine of him and everything. And he learns about like Sun Tzu and all these other military strategies, and figures like, I want to, because he really wants to, go and lead an army and things like that. But because of his short stature and the fact he got picked on, he kind of washed out, and he figured like, okay, I'm going to do it my way. He's the youngest to like kind of join. And he got that whole, Steve Rogers before he got the formula, got that frail position. And so he's not taken seriously. So he figures he would go to Gotham and actually utilize his tactics the way he always wanted to in the army if they would have let him like continue on. So he took these like lowly gangsters who's low on the totem pole in terms of crime gangsters in this one little section of Gotham, and he took over as he had like a plan for them, like, oh, we can break into this armory and get some legit weapons and move our way up the chain of gangsters on this totem pole. He ends up shooting down the leader, taking over, and supplying the other gang fatigues and weaponry so they can start systematically taking down other gangs in the area. In fact, he has like a whole plan on like seeing like, okay, there's like Roman Sionis, there's this other gang, there's the police, and there's Batman. We need to take down a lot of these guys, so that way we will be the top dogs of Gotham. This kind of feeds into the whole strategy thing that Bane will implement on taking down Batman, where it's like, oh, he can he studies hard and do things in a particular way and doesn't try to deviate, so that way he put Batman through his paces and outthink him. But this kid, is on the same degree as Bane, but he did pull off very significant stuff in order to get as far as he did. So can't really knock him for that. So he ends up doing like a drive-by, using some kind of army, vehicle with all these, assault guns and things of that nature. And he's like quoting military, lines, like Veni Vidi Vici, So yeah, here it's got like a couple of gang, like one Ramos Ionis, one gang member, and then the police and Batman. So they take down they go to next is the other uh, uh, gang leader who the general tells him like, hey, surrender to me. You work for me now. If not, I'm taking you down right here and now. Of course, this dude is not trying to hear that. Batman breaks in and try to break this up. At first glance, he's seeing this kid. Oh, they got a kid rolled up in this. Not thinking he's the leader at all. Why would anybody think that? So, while taking out all these little gang crew, uh, the general ends up getting knocked over. Batman jumps down to save him while the general's crew shoots up the other gang leader. He's shot dead. And of course, Batman, in the midst of saving him, not realizing this kid's not who he appears to be, ends up getting knocked out by like a rock by this kid. And I really do not like the ears or the costume in this depiction, honestly. Well, more so the ears. They, that crooked part at the ends does not sit right with me. It really bothers me. So now it's like, okay, we took down the Batman, we took down the other gang member, and it's like, and Roman Sionis is on a run, so he has no followers. So all that's left now is to take down the police, which all the other crew see this is like way ambitious. It's like, we're gonna go up against the cops, and mind you, not every city is built equal, depending on the size of the city. Most let's say it's like Gotham's like New York. New York probably has like at least 60,000 cops. Even if you break off a piece for that one section of Gotham, let's say, or at least maybe Gotham probably is like double the size of New York. So maybe it's like, nearly 120,000 cops. If you break off even a chunk of that, let's say like maybe 6,000 for this one section of the city, that's still not enough for your, yeah, sure, you're acquiring more gangs into your fold, so you're raising an army, but it still pales in comparison to your overall ambitious thing, because you will be taken down. And what's stopping the mayor or the governor of Gotham for calling the National Guard if he needs to in order to deal with your lot? Yeah, you got like military hardware, but that, pales in comparison to the amount of ammunition that the other cops, or if need be, the National Guard carries. And secondly, it will eventually run out. And thirdly, you don't have the numbers. It still pales in comparison to the overall scope of the police personnel. But the kid's still kind of technically smart, because as he's going to the nearby precinct that's in the neighborhood, he intends to rob the armory to acquire more weapons for his expanding army. And Batman, in the meantime, is trying to find this general to put a stop to this whole ordeal. So the general plots, okay, we need to take out their communication and their lights so they can't call for help, so they completely be like on their own, so we can effectively take them down with relative ease, because we will have the numbers and the firepower by comparison to them. And I think that will probably be a scheme for any other type of precinct. And at the same time try to acquire more people for his, expanding army. But eventually that will probably that will lose steam. But I'm pretty sure learning from all these different books about military strategy, he will come up with other schemes down the line so he won't play the same trick twice. But anyway, that's just my guess. I imagine that's how any decent strategist would think about. Don't pull the same trick twice, because that won't always work. Well, then, Batman eventually finds this guy, stops like the gangs from tearing ass into the precinct, beats everybody up, and then this kid is literally frightened because this dude coming like a little bat out of hell, and he's literally on his way like crying like "Mommy," because it's like it's all said and done. He's still, like he's not even 18 yet. He's like 14. So this big time powerhouse general, at the end of the day, is still like a young kid. So Batman ends up capturing him and mentions like, when you get out of juvenile hall, I better not see you pull this stunt again, because at that point you'll be 18. Then I can really lay into you. Because like, like, trust me, like, you lucky you're 14 right now. You're going to juvenile hall, and you best wise up, because once you turn 18 and you pull this stuff again, I will come after you, and I will not play nice, because I'm going easy on you because you're 14 years old. But do not push me. It's like literally putting like a fear of God in this little kid. So Batman puts an end to that, and of course, Bane's men is watching from afar, just monitoring his moves and his strategy and how he operates. So it's like he's studying him for like months at this point. But it's going to be months in this particular story event that he will be monitoring from afar to study his opponent. I want to bring up the fact that by the epilogue of this story, you get to see this kid's, family from a different city getting a call from the police about like, hey, we have your son here, and he done some stuff. We need you to come by. We need you to come to Gotham because it's very serious. And of course, apparently, he does not have a good relationship with his family, and they seem delighted at the fact that he's in trouble with the law for some reason. I guess they kind of sent him, or not sent him. He seems to revel in the idea of being like in the military, so he kind of chose to go to the military just to probably get away from his family and try to do things, on his own, and probably wasn't appreciated at home, because they seem delighted the fact that he's like in trouble. Is kind of crazy. We don't get too much on that, but it's just like, yeah, I can only imagine the kind of upbringing he had up until the point of going to the boot camp. So it's like, Bane just getting word on the news about this whole ordeal. And like, Batman comes with an idea. It's like, okay, I'm going to probably need you to, he's telling Tim, like, I'm probably going to need you to start training John Paul Valley, because we're going to need some extra help, because I admit I'm probably not up to snuff, and I need to get this under control. So I need you to start training John Paul Valley so we can get some extra hands on this kind of thing right now. So he ends up getting like a security job for Jean Paul at the at one of the Wayne buildings, headed by Lucius Fox. And of course, it's like, like I said, like I really do not. Of course, they changed up Jean Paul Valley's look in the comics, but at this early point in time where he's introduced into the DC universe, he is looking like Hanson. It's just like that bob he got going on with his blonde hair, and in certain angles, he kind of looks like a woman. uh, he's kind of like just a complete dork, but he gets very undorkified, pretty soon as he's being trained by Robin. So Robin tells him everything. He gives him the proto his training suit. He gives him his training suit so he can learn, how where to he modified the whole needlehead look so he can have like straps instead of like needle whip things on his body. So you got pouches, like here's your smoke bombs, here's your grapple, here's a smoke grenade, and here's all the little tools we typically have is the basics. And so I'll train you along the way. You do some patrolling on the streets and things of that nature, so we can get you prepared down the line. Okay, let's see for this slide. Yeah. It's getting kind of warm. I had to crack the window. It's getting kind of hot. About to close the door and close the window in a second. Yeah, look at this suit. I mean, it's definitely better than that needlehead thing, but this is just like look like a standard kind of ninja type of outfit. But as the story goes on, you'll see this dude's descent into some psychosis going on, because that he calls it the system, but just the brainwashing by the Order of Saint Dumas is starting to like really affect him psychologically, because it's starting to like poke his head. But it is being curved by Batman's tutelage, or at least Robin's tutelage by extension from Batman. So that way, he won't just go completely wig out, but he'll eventually start going too far with a lot of the criminal element, because it's like just basic decency. It's kind of like he just, it's like kicking them when they're down kind of situation. You'll see that soon. 1 second. I'm sorry. Let me got check something here. Let me put you like on a brief intermission. Sorry, 1 second. Okay. So, uh, Robin's, started to train Jean Paul in the ways of Batman. All the while, like we see like these lowly criminal elements trying to rob the Wayne building, and we see like the training put into motion. Not all that very interesting. Just seeing like him getting prepared, dealing with this rigmarole of this people trying to steal from uh, Batman, but steal from the company. And it's also an inside job by another security guy working along with Jean Paul at this building. So they end up getting, all busted. But we see that Jean Paul is like, getting a little too rough and nearly killing one of the dudes. But here's a spot where it's like, Batman just coming home and he's like, not, adhering to the same rules he just chastised Tim about. And this is probably the first time in a while that he finally like give Bruce a piece of his mind, which probably is long overdue. Because here's the one. It's like literally taking like a doggone chainsaw to one of these crooks. So it's like, yeah, that brainwashing is like starting to come to fruition, just little by little, when things start turning up, and Tim constantly having to like, pull him back. And then we got another dude, some kind of sick, twisted dude who hypnotizes people using music in order to off themselves. Not really all that interesting. But it comes after Lucius, which, draws Batman out to do something about it. All the while, Lucius dealing with, like, the whole ramifications of Black Mass's, the arson attacks, and then all the stuff following up with, people trying to rob the building. So I guess the Department of Defense is getting like, a little antsy, like, okay, clearly you guys ain't handling your business because you constantly getting attacked and putting, people in liable situations. So it's, it's becoming much. Not going to lay into it for too long, but, this bald-headed dude with glasses, comes after Lucius eventually. Was Batman, and also thanks to Jean Paul Valley rescuing him before he dives into the river. And of course, Lucius doesn't know Bruce Wayne is Batman in this. This is like, this is like in like 1990, somewhere between 1992 and 1993, something like that. It's a very early 90s story. But I don't think, Lucius started learning. I don't think it's like written into the story for canon that Lucius knows who Batman is until maybe like mid 2000s. I think like the earliest that I can remember that they have Lucius know who Bruce Wayne is was probably during the New 52 era of comics. I think that's the earliest I can think of. So now we see like this Dr. Kinsolving, who's kind of like a, not to say new age kind of like therapist, but just like try unconventional ways to help her patients. Currently, right now, she's also helping Tim Drake's dad, who's in a wheelchair and trying to like after recuperate, from some kind of like ordeal. I can't really recall. But he's also living in like a little house near, right next to Wayne Manor. so that way Tim will always be close by. But of course, I think from this point in, like, prior to the story, Tim Drake's father is a little jealous because of the fact that, you know, Wayne's been looking after and of Tim and being like a surrogate father, because he was like an absentee father, so he's a little jealous, that kind of thing. And it feels like, oh, you should, you know, you should stay together, and like, I don't find it cool that you live with this dude, blah 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 blah. Not really all that important, but I thought I'd bring it up here while I'm on the subject. But while she's treating him, she's also treating Bruce, who she's unethically getting infatuated with. But you know, there's another therapist that's doing like press runs on various TVs later on into the story. Not gonna bring it up all that much, or no, this is probably the only time I'll probably bring it up. No, I'll probably bring it up the second time when it comes to a head, but I thought I'd bring it up now, where this dude, you know, was trying to write his book about how like we should sympathize and not look at the criminal element as, you know, insane inmates and blah blah blah, which everybody think like he's, you know, he's probably losing his mind a bit, think we should sympathize with these, you know, insane criminals. And I don't think that the writers here at that time, because this is like in the 90s, this is before the whole embracing therapy and everything like that we've been on for the past handful of years, because it did, you know, therapists and psychologists did get like a bit of a bad rap for many years, including in like the early 90s, where they always seemed like quacks and shrinks and not really, you know, really treating people, or it always seemed like they only focus on like kind of like insane, which is kind of like stereotyping therapists at that time. But as they are written here, because that was like always the joke, Kinso was not like a complete nitwit. I'm pretty sure her, you know, the way she's carrying on is probably not all that different from what certain therapists would probably, new age therapists would probably do today. But, you know, it's the thing, you know, during this whole Knightfall saga, you probably won't see her all that much after this little event. Because matter of fact, I don't think I've ever seen Kinsolving outside of this. But Sandra is infatuated with Bruce because, like, oh, like, you know, I can fix him mindset. Like, he's mysterious. Oh, it's like, oh, you're rich. You shouldn't have that much problems. And you can go off to the French Riviera if you're feeling like, you know, burned out at work, and, you know, you shouldn't be like this ragged, like, you know, what's going on? But I'm so curious, and like, I'm also infatuated. And it's like, I don't know. She doesn't really leave much of an impact with this character, honestly. I kind of like the way she's, you know, drawn, but it just seems like she, you know, her infatuated with Bruce seems quick, not earned at all. Hell, even Vicky Vale and Silver St. Cloud have more of a impact in terms of relationships, or their infatuation with Bruce / Batman seems a little bit more earned than this character. But she sees, like, you know, she tries to, you know, help him along the way, gives him her numbers, you know, so he can contact her no matter where, no matter when. She want to be there for him, because she's just like I want to be there for you. I can fix you, kind of thing. It's kind of like the polar opposite to like Harley and Joker kind of situation. So she's, you know, suggests that, you know, start with, you know, sedatives just to make sure he just at least gets some sleep, and then work their way up. So temporarily, he tells Tim to like have John Paul put on my costume for one night while I try to get some rest. but don't have them speak all that much. Stick to the shadows, especially if you're dealing with someone like Jim Gordon, so they won't pick at the fact that it's not the same person, because Jim's not an idiot. The writers kind of treat him like an idiot because he's supposed to be one of the best detectives, so he would know at least eventually who Batman is and just playing along like he doesn't know. But then, like, Killer Croc showing up, goes on a rampage. Bane sees this as an opportunity because he's taking notice that this supposed Batman is swinging by trying to stop Killer Croc, even though it's like he knows, like, this is not the guy I've been monitoring this whole time. This is clearly a different person, just by the way he moves and operates. And then, of course, Bird fills in Bane about Killer Croc, how he used to be like one of the top gangsters here, but then he just turns into a complete like savage animal, which is true. That there, in certain Silver Age stories, I think Killer Croc, wore fedora and trench coat. He was like doing a whole gangster thing with a gimmick, but now because he had like a skin condition and everything like that, but it kind of went aggressive and he just went on full on Croc. So while Batman, or at least John Paul and Robin, tries to deal with Croc, Bane, it kind of reminds me of like the episode where Bane showed up in the animated series. While Batman and Robin is trying to chase down Croc, Croc runs into Bane, and Bane beats him savagely and puts him into several casts. And we see here that Bane ends up breaking this guy's arms, beating him savagely, juicing up, and just like beating the heck out of him like he is mine. You will not like interfere, monster. And he just like done. And of course, like, as is trying to instruct Jean Paul not to go after Bane, or at least not Bane, not engage Croc, try to keep a distance, because the last thing you want him to get his hands on you. But of course he's not listening, or he got distracted because Bane was showing up out of the blue. And now Sean Paul's like kind of like start getting his feelings about the fact that he's being bested by certain individuals, and it's like his ego is getting bruised. And of course he wants to take on Bane since he took down Croc, and Bane's like, I'm not wasting my time with you. You're pathetic. You're not even him. I know you're not him. So he just pieced out, which is like make Jean Paul look like a complete fool. But then like the Riddler eventually pops up, leaving riddles about like a bomb showing up at like a clock tower kind of situation. Of course, Batman eventually progressively puts on his costume the next night and shows up, tells like Jean Paul, you did your thing, thanks, but I'm stepping in now, so you can go. So like he like Jean Paul is like all mopey about it, like So while Batman's trying to solve the riddle, Bane comes figures it out, because Bird is the guy who gives like the lowdown about certain Gotham elements here. He's a little encyclopedia of knowledge for Bane, and he informs Bane like, oh, Riddler's not really like a fighter. He's more like he's a very intelligent person, and he leaves riddles for Batman and the cops to figure out his next scheme. And of course, this doesn't really, in Bane's mind, not pose much of a challenge for him, but he takes it anyway. It's like, okay, yeah, clock tower, I figured it out. So he's very knowledgeable. So he comes by early while Riddler is still setting up, and he shoots Bane with these little darts filled with venom because he figures like, okay, the battle of wits isn't enough. I need, to see how he is in like a real fight. So he pumps temporarily Riddler full of, like venom, which is not going to last too long, but long enough for Batman to show up and see how he is in like a model fight with, somebody greater of size. Kind of like testing to see like how he would be to him, so that way, he won't be caught by surprise, but Batman would. So Riddler is kind of like not crazed, but he's not himself because of the venom formula. So he ends up getting away while Batman has to deal with disarming a bomb. But he ends up, finding where Riddler is later while he's trying to set up another explosive by the, like a dock. A second here. Because even with venom pumping through his veins, he's still the Riddler. As a matter of fact, there's got to be Riddler stories I need to put on the list of comics to review, because Riddler is one of my favorite comic book villains of all time. Probably One Bad Day, because that was a solid Riddler story that came out, a year ago, or a year or so ago. Okay. So Batman stops, Riddler's scheme, but Riddler ends up getting shot by Krog and the other two working for Bane, just to and then escape before Batman took notice, because he's trying to concentrate on the bomb and saving Riddler from drowning in the water while bleeding. But it's like all a scheme, just to further test Batman, because the only reason they're even there, because since Bane put it, I already tested my metal of wits. Now it's your turn by finding out where Riddler going to be setting up his next plan, and that's where they eventually show up. Around the same time as like Batman will show up. So now they going to the next step of their plan, was breaking into. They used some kind of dummy robot for this. Don't know why. Well, I know why, because the security at this weapons factory, they end up breaking in and stealing a bunch of military grade weapons and use it to blow open like a huge portion of wall off the side of Arkham Asylum, releasing nearly all the Gotham inmates there. So you got like Maxie Zeus, the ventriloquist, Joker, Poison Ivy. We got the Amygdala. Listen, just got this giant bruiser idiot dude. Victor Zsasz and Mad Hatter, and Film Freak. But if you watch Teen Titans, he would have been known as Control Freak, which, like, I kind of picked it up right away. It's like, oh, he's like got to think about like TV and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, this is supposed to be Control Freak, but they call him Film Freak back in the day. But I just remember as Control Freak because he's like a cool character from the Teen Titans episodes. But anyway, so Joker is, pretty much terrorizing, or putting the warden, Amadeus Arkham, or not Amadeus Arkham. There's some Arkham, lineage into this little trap with this gun, but Batman saves in the nick of time. But Bane is just far away to watch and monitor his movements and how he gets inside, deals with the whole entire ordeal. But Tim wants to help, but Batman says, like, no, you go to Gotham. Any stragglers making it to the city, I need you to deal with that. I'm the one more equipped to handle these inmates immediately. Which, as one of Bruce's kind of biggest problems, he's not like working as a team, even though he has assistants. He just constantly, which is typical for Batman, constantly has to deal with things on his own. He rarely, acquires help from people. So he stopped a handful of inmates at this point. And once, he's heading out, there's a significant amount of criminals that escaped. And he's just, outside, and he just let out this, roar. It's just, he just needed, a release, and he's just like, oh, God. It's like, ah! That just, that pent-up tension is, just had to be released. This is a lot right now. And the fact that on top of that, now he has to wrangle all these criminals, on the for the next couple of nights, having to wrangle a lot of these villains because they all gonna be started, making plans, wreaking havoc either immediately or planning out something that is gonna be a problem down the line, because a lot of them have, kind of schemes. Like Joker, and Poison Ivy, they don't just typically just do things immediately. They have overarching goals, and so those are the ones that he's really worried about, because they'll just lay low until the time is right, which he refused to have that be an issue. It's I got to deal with this now. I do not want these guys getting a second to breathe, because 2 days, 3 days, a week, at some point, they're going to be coming right around causing the issue with this city that I'm going to have to put out a fire for. So we first get Mad Hatter, who mind controls a couple of thugs, answering his little invitation for a tea party, which I don't know why anybody would show up for anything where the Mad Hatter is involved, but they end up doing so anyway, thinking some kind of grand scheme he might be planning, trying to get a get rich quick scheme kind of situation. One of them is Film Freak or Control Freak, and they all get mind controlled by the Hatter. So he's the first one on Batman's list to deal with. Mad Hatter realized he's being followed. He has a pet monkey that captured one of Bird's Bird, who was always in the area somehow around where Batman is, always keeping an eye on things so Bird can relate back to Bane. So he put a tracking device on the Bird, and it has Control Freak follow the signal to see who has been monitoring him. And of course, they, Bane and the others find the tracking device and see Control Freak luring outside, while Batman and Robin is dealing with the Mad Hatter. They hear over the intercom, Mad Hatter's intercom, that Bane is pretty much beaten to death control freak. While that is going on, we see more escapees like the ventriloquist, who is teaming up with the amygdala bruiser, who's just wanting his medicine, but he's like, using a new puppet, Sako, because he's just like cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. He's like, oh, help us find Mr. Scarface, and we'll get you your medicine. And so he just follows, ventriloquist and Sako, which is kind of like a nihilist villain, honestly. Both of these guys are nihilist villains. But when Batman gets worried about the ventriloquist, he goes and like, okay, this is supposed to be an easy thing, so I can just get this guy and bring him in. I don't have to use all that much force. But then he gets caught by surprise by the amygdala. He ends up taking this guy down, but ventriloquist gets away. Now, he shows up a couple of times while trying to find Scarface. He ends up kidnapping his own lawyer to figure out where they would have kept Scarface. And it's like, well, the evidence locker, even though that should have been like the first spot he probably would have gone to. But then finding him, and then Scarface argues with Sako, and then, putting out weapons on each other, and, ventriloquist shoot his hands essentially. And it's like a waste. And could have done, if you want to use this character, you better just do something with it. And it seems like a waste. But as I'll bring it up here, because I probably won't be bringing up all that soon anyway. But Robin took notice that, they're being followed. And this is very weird. And of course, we know Tim is like an impressive fighter. And yeah, this might be maybe a couple of years into his career as Robin, but he should have significant training. This guy's supposed to be some kind of lawyer or something like that, but he's fighting like he's Deathstroke or something. I don't know. Tim should have easily laid this dude out. Honestly, there's no reason for him to have that much of an issue with this guy who's named Bird. But he ends up getting away when Bane says, like, no, it's like, he's not the target. Leave him be. We need to, concentrate on Batman. Then Batman answered the call about Victor Zsasz taking over this, building, like a hospital or something like that, with a bunch of women, and now it's like a hostage situation going on. This is a detective named Kitsch, working with Bullock and Montoya, trying to figure out how to stop Victor Zsasz before he hurts anybody. Of course, Montoya ends up going in to try to curb the situation. Batman comes in, and then you see this doesn't seem like a useless spot, because I don't know, Zsasz starts pointing out certain things like, oh, you moving kind of like slow, you're not the same, and it seems like you're moving. Well, he's just putting stuff together, because he is essentially like a predator himself, where he's, and the way predators move, and when it comes to hunting their prey, it seems he's starting putting together Batman seems to be being hunted, and he doesn't have all the pieces. And of course, he thinks do you know something about Bane? Who is he? And things of that nature. And it's like, he doesn't have all the answers, but he's starting yeah, your eye's not on the ball. You're not keeping your head on the swivel like you usually do. Things of that sort. It's like you are now in our position, the way you come after us. Now you're in that position. It's somebody who's better than you, essentially. and now you're moving in the same. You're moving in the ways that he wants you to move before he pounces. And I kind of like this in a way, because as Batman dealing with all these villains, each one should point out something like the fact, like, dude, you're moving kind of oddly. It's like you're not seeming like 100% yourself, or like getting some tips, like, and Batman's like, do you know who Bane is? Or it's like, it's like, I don't know, something going on here. I don't know what, but I don't know. It's kind of like learning something from each of these villains that he's already been dealing with for years, and them trying to give him, I won't say give him advice, but he's learning something in a way from these guys. It's like, it's like Zaz is like, yeah, like, I know how it is to hunt, prey. I've been doing it for most of my criminal career, and you're moving you're moving kind of like a prey would. Somebody's hunting you. So it's like, and he's still reveling in it, and I want the villains to revel in it, but also take notice and, not so subtly give them some kind of hints or piece of their 2 cents in a way. Because, as the way I see it, like Tim, Alfred, Bullock, they all tell him, like, dude, you're moving kind of crazy. If your villains have to explain, like, hey, you moving kind of weird, is kind of like, helps to reassess. But I don't know. It's something that I would have done a little bit differently if you're dealing with all these villains in one gauntlet. But Batman ends up stopping Zaz while Tim is following Bird and seeing Bane for the first time, and try to follow him, but ends up getting caught by Bane and held hostage temporarily. And this is where Bullock, points out, like, Batman's kind of moving kind of weird. Yeah. It's like he telling you, like, dude, you probably need to get some rest, man. Because that seemed like a lot even for you. And at this point, Croc shows back up, wanting revenge against Bane for beating him the way he did. And while Bane is trying to interrogate Robin, trying to get more info about Batman to learn more about him, to better best him when the final confrontation eventually happens. But of course, Tim's not giving up anything. Killer Croc in a Deus Ex Machina shows up, and these two bruisers trying to take each other down. This gives Tim the time he needs to make his escape, because he is not in any shape to deal with either one of these guys, which allows him to get home and try to warn Bruce about this whole entire situation. Then we see a couple of more inmates, with Scarecrow teaming up with the Joker after the Joker tried to team up with some kind of cannibal dude that's, only showed up here in this story, but ends up getting caught after trying to go after Gordon. But Scarecrow's like, hey, we making an effective team, we should team up. So they decide, instead of going after Gordon, they should go after the man above him, which would be the mayor, who has problem with, working with vigilante, Gordon working with this vigilante in the first place. All that will change pretty quickly. But now Batman and Robin is dealing with trying to go after Firefly, Garfield Lynns, this pyromaniac. is seemingly at random. He's going after certain places and starts setting them on fire. Well, Batman is trying to figure out what's his next move. He has Tim to track down like the next of kin, which would have been like a sister, which the police already like is trying to question about a possible whereabouts where Garfield would be. And Tim gets word about an orphanage that they used to be because it was, orphaned at a young age. He ends up going there, and another needless thing for some reason, there's this mysterious silhouetted nun who's hanging out at this abandoned orphanage, giving Tim this, tips about, Garfield as a kid, as him and his sisters trying to get adopted, and this kindly couple is telling them all these wonderful places that they will take the kids to and things of that nature, like the amusement park or whatever. And because once they find out that this young boy is kind of a pyromaniac, they kind of like no thanks, and then they dipped off. Which the places that they said they'll take Garfield and his sister, he decided right now to go and set on fire. But then this nun just mysteriously disappeared for some reason. It's like, why you have like a magic nun showing up in a story like this? Seems very pointless. It does not change anything if she was actually like a real person who used to work there. Because I can't help but think about this Daredevil story where the mom that abandoned him and Matt Murdock's dad when Matt was a baby, she ended up joining a convent, and as an adult, Matt frequents this particular church that he did not realize his mom was a nun in. And at first, one of the, I think it was Born Again, she seemed like this mysterious nun kind of thing. Not sure if she was silhouetted or not, but it's played in that nature where it's like, at least with the whole Daredevil thing, it came around eventually in another story. Here, it never circled back ever again. Why was this magic not even like a thing? What was the point of this? But we also got to deal with Poison Ivy, who has put these leeches or something on these dudes and set up a scheme where she's hijacking this event, this social event for the rich, people, where Bruce is going to with Dr. King solving, and all the men there is like bewitched by these pheromones except for Bruce, but he pretends to be so he can figure out what Poison Ivy's plan is. And of course he plans on robbing them and then killing them. But he quickly changed to Batman while Bane is still monitoring, or at least have his goons monitoring and relay information back to him. He changed to Batman and take out all these goons that are pretty much hypnotized by Poison Ivy and putting a stop to her machinations. Wasn't long, but it's not to see early Poison Ivy. And here's that quack, on this little press tour to pitch his book about, sympathizing with the criminally insane. And he built this book after his interview after his having like a sit down with the Riddler a while back. And of course the Riddler is showing up threatening to blow up the TV studio because he had like a gang, but they ain't trying to follow him because he's too obsessed with leaving riddles to their schemes, you know, he can easily pull off successful schemes if he just did not feel the need to leave a riddle for people to figure out. So his gang abandoned him, so he feels like a joke. So now it's like, okay, I'm gonna show people I'm not a joke. So Tim goes to deal with that. What was this thing that Riddler says? Because he's got like a very menacing look here. And Dr. Flanders, we've met before, haven't we? Yes, Eddie. And I see you've written a little book. I'm saying, and so are you. Well, you couldn't have written it with me in mind, because I'm not sane and I never will be. Isn't that right, Doc? And here's another one for the folks at home. What begins with a P ends in an E? Has thousands of letters in it. Of course, the whole entire, he doesn't have any kind of funds to build a bomb, so they all kind of fake. But Tim ends up stopping him anyway. And Bullock is not too thrilled by the way he handled things, because that could have easily had gone wrong. The way, like, you know, Tim charged in the way that he did. But while Tim sort that out, Batman's tangling with Firefly again, and, you know, trying to stop him. Eventually, he does, which dealing with Firefly is taking like at least a couple of nights, which it shouldn't not have taken that long. But while those plots are wrapping up, we still got Joker and Scarecrow out there, and they're trying to figure out like how, you know, how they can use the mayor to their advantage, which just pretty much, you know, exploiting him and trying to get money, because Scarecrow need money to fund his little to fund his experiments to make more fear gas and other stuff. Of course, Joker's can't give two craps about anything about science and all the stuff that Scarecrow would care about. He just want to cause like havoc and chaos and things like that nature. He brings up the fact that, you know, it's kind of weird that he still has like a sidekick, because I could have sworn I killed him, which referencing death in the family that happened not too long ago. So while Gordon and a lot of the cops are trying to track down the mayor, they're, you know, constantly gassing this dude with fear toxin because he's afraid of snakes and everything like that. And you hear like, you know, or you see Joker hissing and rattling stuff. It's like, yes, you know, mayor, like the little serpents with the forked tongues. It's just like taunting this dude. So they near like this dam or pipeline or something like that with, you know, lots of water. The Scarecrow hits Batman with some fear toxin, and it brings up the whole ordeal with Jason Todd being beaten by the Joker. So that made him just angry, and he just starts beating Joker and Scarecrow savagely, just like hardly any, you know, moment to hold back. And like, you know, Joker is even like just bruised the heck up, and he just starts screaming, Jason, Jason. And like, you know, he's just like, you know, Joker just bruised all the hell up until like Scarecrow managed to shoot out like a rocket that destroyed most of the wall in like the area, which is causing the tunnel to flood. While Joker and Scarecrow make their escape, Batman gets crawled out of there and to safety so he can eventually come to walk on his own to the cops that's nearby. And of course, now Batman is just at the end of his ropes. He is like running on fumes and ready to just collapse in the bed. And after this ordeal, Mayor Crawl, that's the name, is just like, Batman saved my life. I was totally against Batman before, but I'm all on the Batman train now. I was like, further into the story, you'll see this dude's like, Kitsch is questioning things with Batman or supposed Batman. And it's like, the mayor's like, no, I don't want to hear it. Wherever Batman wants, Batman gets. Do not get in his way. Let him do his thing. He's just like, no, like, do not get in Batman's way. Let him do his thing. All on Batman bandwagon. All right. Nearly done. Now, we are at the penultimate part of the story, or at least the climax of the story, I should say, where Bane is getting close to like, oh, we're nearly ready to, the final confrontation of Batman. So now he's sending his 3 goons to like take it to the next level. Like, I want you guys to go after the Batman now. Why? Because these guys, yeah, sure, they might be capable fighters, not to the same degree as maybe Bane. They can definitely deal with some street toughs, but it's like you sending like B-ranked ninjas to some S-ranked ninjas and hoping that works out well. Batman easily subdues these, 3. Of course, even at this point, sure, he's kind of like, at the end of his ropes, but even still, he still manages to subdue each of these guys. Not long enough for any cops to come to arrest these guys. So he takes on Krog, he want to say Skeletor, Zombie, and Bird. And then he asks him like, where's Bane? Where are the other drugs going? I'm not wearing hockey pads. He just starts beating the heck out of him. I think Bird got the worst. But these guys are so loyal to Bane, they refuse to give up any information. They would rather die than give up any information about Bane. Oh, people laying off fireworks still. Yeah, don't you hate it when people start laying off random fireworks when July 4th was long since passed? But now we're at the climax. Batman has been going through a lot at this point, dealing with various villains, some known, some unknown, barely any sleep, barely any time for him to get patched up. And he comes home just barely out of his Batman costume, seeing Alfred on the ground, unconscious, with Bane in his house, waiting for him to come out of the clock room with the Batcave, the secret entrance to the Batcave, and he just total shock. Like Bane just caught him with his pants down, coming out the bathroom. Like what? He's been looking for this dude, and like this dude just showed up at his house, knowing full well who he is. Don't think in the, well, I think it's depending on the writer. I think in some aspects, Bane doesn't remember who Batman is, and other times it seems like he do, but just doesn't, mess with his like kind of like inner sanctum or sanctuary, just sheer respect or whatever. I'm not sure. It depends on the writer. Sometimes Bane's, does seem like he knows who Batman is. Sometimes it doesn't. But anyway, so now Batman puts on his mask, and while recalling each enemy he's been facing since this whole entire thing started with Black Mask, Bane is just like beating Batman in degrees as can be described into words. Because Batman has been put through the ringer before, but there's only like 3 instances in Batman's comic book history that I know that he has been like beaten to the brink of like death. Bane, Batman Who Laughs, during the whole DC Metals situation, and more recently, the failsafe arc in Detective Comics not too long ago, where this like robot that's he himself, or at least subconsciously designed, or at least his alter ego, the Batman Zero Nar, created in case Batman ever killed anybody, or activate and take out Batman before he does any further damage. It's kind of a fail safe for Batman. And he literally, I did like a review of that story, which is up on my YouTube channel if you want to check out my review of that particular arc. But it's just like, those are like those rare instances that I can recall that Batman has just like, with very little help, if not ever, and just get trashed. Now, in this particular case, Batman is not at his peak. Bane played it smart and just put like, at least a few instances it wasn't him, like the whole general thing and Black Mask. But the whole Arkham breakout, he, orchestrated that just to not give Batman a time to rest. He's, he's just like pushing him to the point where he's not tip top, so he can just pretty much pounce and not get sidetracked by any kind of distractions. No distraction technique, no hiding in the shadows, no deception, no amount of strength, lack thereof, is going to deter him from his mission to breaking the bat. And of course, Alfred's waking up, and he can't do anything about it, so he ends up running as fast as he can. Of course, it will be too late, but as fast as he can next door to Tim to get some help, because like, we gotta go, we gotta help Bruce. And it's like from the top of the stairs in the living room going all the way down to the Batcave, he's just getting tossed around like a rag doll and just beaten savagely. And despite him trying to put up a fight, it's just not enough. He does not have the necessary strength needed to even put up a real challenge. Like, everything from every opponent, like, Riddler, the General, like, Metalhead, Mad Hatter, Joker, Scarecrow, all these people. It's just like, he had to deal with all these guys. You got, like Singe from like Firefly's flames, and then with Poison Ivy's little, try to gas him, and with the fear toxin, with Scarecrow, all this stuff. It's not just physically, it's mentally. He is drained. It's like he has nothing left. He is ready to come and just lay down finally. But right when he thinks he probably has finally the time to do so, here is this big bruiser that he's never met before coming in and just kicking his ass, who's well trained and significantly stronger, mostly thanks to the venom pumping through him. So it's just like we're just watching panel after panel after panel of Batman just getting his ass beat to hell. And for a lot of Batman fans back in the 90s, that's just like probably hard to read. And he ends up getting kicked into like the memorial glass case where Jason Todd's Robin costume was. And he's just like, he's just like whimpering certain things and like, Jason. He's like, calling out to Jason, like, pretty much like his, ally for help. He doesn't even call for Tim. He's calling for Jason. He needs, is like this the one person that's probably still on his mind because of probably the lingering fear toxin effects. And just getting this bitch slapped. And then finally at that moment that Bane raised the battered body of Batman above his head and just breaks him. He broke in the bat. While people are still reeling from the death of Superman, months prior to this, now on top of all that, they have to deal with the fact that Batman has, essentially been crippled by a brand new villain who's just like a big bruiser with a strategic mind that Batman has never dealt with before. As a matter of fact, I didn't bring this up. I didn't bring this up earlier while I was talking about the art. This is probably one of my favorite Batman costumes in comics. I'm not sure. It's the blue and the gray and the yellow belt. All works. I like this design. Simple. It just looks good. But anyway. So, Bane pretty much dragged Batman's, broken body in the middle of Gotham City, towering over everybody, screaming at everybody to, pretty much to get their attention. Here's your hero. This city is mine. And like bury your hero. And then he tosses Batman's unconscious body and hitting rooftops and awnings and etc. until it's laid out on the ground in the middle of this crowd with different expressions from young and old, all worried, scared, and just bewildered, confused. You got a child crying. One little punk is just mean mugging, like he's just getting off on this. Women crying, people freaking out. It's like, oh my God, this guy, has been protecting our city from all sorts of people. And now here he is, laid the heck out bleeding. And people just don't know what to do. This is like pretty much how probably Metropolis feels right now with their hero pretty much like gone, at least supposedly. As a matter of fact, now I'm thinking about it, Wonder Woman doesn't, because you're talking about the big three, Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman as like the big three of DC Comics. While Superman going through his thing and Batman went through his thing around this time, it's kind of wild to me now thinking about that. They never probably, it probably would have been like a smart play for somebody to come up with like a Wonder Woman story where she goes through a particular ringer for a particular villain that causes her to like get laid up for a while. Whereas like, what's Wonder Woman's Doomsday or what's her Knightfall? And that would have been an interesting thing. It's like, oh my God, we're making bank in DC because we got the gumption to, show our big three being taken down by crazy obstacles they never seen before. That their power is on a different level by comparison to them. That'd have been like a very interesting thing. Matter of fact, I've been reading some Wonder Woman recently, and one of the villains she's been, dealing with is it's like an ensemble thing, like trying to gather all Wonder Woman's roles together. One of them is Darkseid's daughter, who really had this big slug out fest between her and Diana. She could easily be like a Knightfall attempt for Wonder Woman, where Wonder Woman is going through some type of situation or just like a dragged out fight where she's just like getting bashed and bruised, and she ends up winning the fight, but she just collapses. She has got nothing left, and she's just like kind of laid out or something akin to that. Like what would be Wonder Woman's Knightfall? Anyway, Montoya and the cops that was around there try to call for like an EMT. They end up showing up, but it turns out to be John Paul Valley and Alfred in disguise as EMTs, gathering Bruce and bringing him to the cave. And Alfred says, like, we need to get this particular medical thing because right now his body is like shattered. It's like darn near shattered glass at this point. But in order to hopefully save him, we need like a particular thing that we don't have on hand. So Tim is a kind of all hands on deck kind of situation. Tim ends up going to Gordon to say like he's all right, but we need this particular medical thing in order to save him. So he gets Bullock and Montoya to go to the nearby hospital to just order this particular medical thing. They go to this alleyway where John Paul and Tim takes the medical thing, so they got an hour. They need to get all this together. They go back to the cave. Alfred administered it. So now they're just waiting for Bruce to come out of this little coma thing, because he's just like, you just see this. He is just like, he was broken. It's like, Lord knows what isn't shattered. Okay. So here again, the medical thing. So I mean, I love seeing this because it shows that Batman's been around long enough and built up this, relationship with these particular cops, Montoya, Gordon, and Bullock, to where they gladly going out their way to help their ally, because he done so much. They just refuse to allow him to die when they know they could help. So like, damn the protocols, run red lights, I don't care, get him what he needs. And meanwhile, Bane figures like, oh, I'm top of the world. I own Gotham now. Nobody's going to mess with me. So he starts taking out other gangs, establishing himself as the sole person that people will come to and dealing with their dirty dealings and things of that sort. Any other gangs will pay tribute to him, things of that nature. Otherwise, they will, deal with the consequences. Alfred and Tim figures like, okay, the only person with better medical expertise, especially when it comes to psychological stuff, is Sandra, but she can't know what happened, so they fabricate this plan on destroying one of Bruce's cars, pushing it off the side of the cliff, so they can, play at the fact that, oh, he's like this because he got into a car accident. So that way, it's feasibly bought by somebody. But of course, she has, medical expertise, and kudos to the writers not playing her like an idiot. As like, yeah, I see my fair share of, automobile accidents and what it does to the human body. None of that lines up from what I'm seeing from the x-rays. So this seems more akin to somebody getting beat up. So why don't you tell me what really happened? Or at least, like, don't play me like a fool, like, something else happened, you're not letting me know, but clearly it's not no automobile accident. So, like, please don't, insult my intelligence. But while Bruce is trying to recover, he informs Tim, like, okay, and here's like the way John Paul Valley looks now, got a haircut and everything like that. He instructs Tim, okay, until I recovered, I'm going to need, Gotham still needs Batman. They need to know Batman's still around. Otherwise, the criminal element is just going to go run rampant. And it's already a field day just by these past 2 nights. So he gives one of the spare costumes to John Paul and it's like, okay, we need you to I need you to be Batman for a while. And here you see like the not so subtle twist to this character. John Paul, asked Robin, like, you think I can do it? Wouldn't be here otherwise. You're wrong. I'll be better. Big words. Just don't try to am out on Bane, because that's one of the big no-nos from Bruce, where it's like, do not let him go after Bane. Bane is mine. He's too much for anybody else for right now. Just deal with the other criminals. Do not go after Bane. And of course, John Paul will completely ignore this, because not only his ego, is bruised by this guy with a Killer Croc incident, but that Saint Dumas thing is like messing around with his mind. Is really starting to affect him now. And now he's also thinking like he can, just do a better job being Batman than Batman. And he's trying to just take over completely. And lo and behold, just so you know, John Paul Valley is probably like the overarching villain for this 3-part volume of Knightfall, Knight's Quest, and Knight's End. But Night Quest and Knight's End will be their own separate videos. They're probably not going to be as long as this one, because they're already coming up in 2.5 hours with this review. It's so much that I wanted to cover to get all in, so you can understand like the entire arc of this particular volume. You see, like, Bane is like getting, a lot of the criminal element, like Catwoman, who steals stuff and try to fence things. It's like, now you'll be working with my people. You want to lift stuff or fence things, you do so under my control, essentially, which of course Catwoman isn't feeling. She has her own little plan, but we'll see to that later. Then you get these little other stories, beyond like the whole bat breaking thing, where it's like we get this character Anarchy. If you ever watched like the Beware the Batman show, where that character is very prominent in, or if you played the video game Arkham Origins, where that character is like a side quest character, Anarchy is a fun villain. I think I like his design in the game and in the TV show better than this, where he's just like a young kid, essentially, who doesn't like the establishment, doesn't think it works, and it hurts people more than it helps, and the world's causing devastation because of this particular system, and he wants to rebel against that every which way he can. But I think I like him just being just like a different type of agent of chaos, but like in Beware the Batman. But then again, it kind of feels like a pseudo or a proto Joker situation, even though that show never got a chance to get into the Joker because it was canceled after a couple of seasons. But I love like the music behind that character. He's very cool and mysterious, and I like that. But I think the overall, because he feels too much like Joker in certain aspects, which I did not care for, but the personality from the video game seems more in line with what anarchy is supposed to, like. He embodies what anarchy is, a race against the establishment kind of situation, or going up against the grain. And I want to take that mindset from the game and apply it to the body from the TV show, and he got a good character altogether. I don't really care for what I've seen here in this comic. So he's escaping from Arkham, going about trying to take down criminals, but he's not physically fit. He got this kind of like, flash, flare gun thing, and the staff. But he blames Batman, saying like, oh, they only out here like Joker and Two-Face and all the other criminal element. It's because it's kind of like the whole movie trilogy. It's like, it's escalation. It's like they only come to challenge you, and it ain't making like the city any better. And Scarecrow's running amok again. He kind of had like a falling out with Joker after that failed, attempt to control the mayor. And he tried to gas Joker, but, doesn't work. The fear gas doesn't work on Joker because he's that insane. And of course, then Joker then takes a chair and says, beat the heck out of Scarecrow. But he shows back up. And this is where you get kind of like a bit of an origin story of Jonathan Crane. He shows back up to his old school that he was teaching at. One of the students recognized him because Jonathan Crane's one of his first kills was his father. And so he put this headgear on the students in his college and, manipulating the teacher there, having the students dress up like him. And I'm pretty sure they lifted this plot to use in Batman Begins, where he's attempting to use these students, manipulate them to go certain places in Gotham to poison the water supply. So when it evaporates for various reasons, people will just be induced by fear. That's pretty much like lifted the plot, from the story to apply it to Batman Begins. I can't help but think of Batman Begins. But he holds close the boy. Apparently, it's like, oh wow, it all started with your father, and then it can end with you, because now he's very learned. He likes reading books, and he notices that from every religion and every culture, they have all these various types of gods: God of war, God of love, God of poetry, God of the sky, things of that nature. But there has never been a God of fear. And he's want to see himself as the God of fear. And he then leaving recordings and phone calls to Detective Gordon. So by midnight tonight, if the city doesn't bow to me and see me as the God of fear, then the entire city will be struck by my poison gas. That's his overall arc. Of course, you can tell the people still have, just from this kid, they can still have their faculties, but they can't help but follow this guy's orders from that because of that headgear he attached to them. So he leaves like a recording of his wishes to the Batman, but the police are watching it too. And of course, it's booby trapped, and Jean Paul Batman dives in and saves them. And we get a bit of the origin story of Crane, where he just was always fascinated by fear. He has like a sick kink of just see it like it's kind of like a little kid when you see like a bunch of pigeons together, and he runs towards them to watch them to freak out, and he's doing it in glee. And then he's a grown man, and you see this dean who hires him as a professor of this particular school, and he's doesn't let off any kind of red flags with this dude just in the middle of talking. He like excuse me, and he goes ah! And it's like you look at what the hell is wrong with this guy, and it's like doesn't like okay, probably made a mistake. Probably should have did some kind of psychological profile on this dude. And of course, then if you're familiar with the comics, Scarecrow abused his authority by, testing fear on his own students by going too far because he got his primary field of study is studying fear and the basis of it. And he starts shooting out like a live gun to test out like a fear of weapons and all this other stuff. You watch the Batman anime series, they allude to that too. Abusing it, scaring his own students, and he gets fired. So you get a bit of that. He's always been like an oddball. People kind of like, not, respecting at all. I think he's weird. So Jean Paul eventually tracked him down the same way as Anarchy eventually tracks down Scarecrow, and John takes down Scarecrow, but Anarchy places a net over both of them. But and this is where you see like Jonathan all of a sudden has like some fighting moves. Of course, he has like Crane style martial arts. Get it, Jonathan Crane? Because he the martial art really utilizes his lanky frame to his full advantage. But it's still no match for Jean Paul, who, thanks to the order, knows how to really fight with more than just that one particular style. Then, while distracted, Crane shoots darts at John and Anarchy, and they get hit with their own induced fears. Of course, Anarchy fears like the establishment controlling everybody with nobody with any individuality and things of that nature. And then John, you see a bit of his fear, where it's like he doesn't seem like he has his own identity of his own because everything has been orchestrated since the time that he was young, so he doesn't know who he is. Now he's pretty much kind of like adopting somebody else's thing. So it's like that's his fear of like not knowing who he is. He's kind of like a malleable clay kind of thing. It's like he has no identity but whoever somebody else morphed him into kind of thing. This is how I'm reading it. But he's powering through it and takes down the Scarecrow. But Scarecrow orders the kid to walk off the edge of the roof. And of course, Bruce would have immediately went after the kid, and the Scarecrow would have escaped. But John is like, he's not Batman. He goes right into laying out Scarecrow to make sure he is captured. And Scarecrow is like, you literally just let that kid go off the roof? But luckily, Anarchy came to and saved the kid. And he's just like, just like flabbergasted that like you're supposed to be some kind of hero, and you just literally let this innocent kid walk off the edge of the roof nearly to his death. And like if I wasn't here, that kid would have died. Of course, John Paul ain't trying to hear nothing this guy says, and he's like, if you ever come around here, causing them, a mess again, I'll crush your head like an egg. Then we see like him and Tim trying to work together, stopping these other criminals. And of course, John is just like completely wigging out. These guys are pretty much like subdued, but one dude tried to come after him with a hammer, and it's like, hand me the hammer or I'll hurt you. He's like, okay, like I give up. And then he's about to literally swing on this guy with his massive mallet until Tim had to hold him back. Dude, he's done. Calm down. Of course, he ain't trying to listen. And he's like, this dude is pretty much going off the edge at this point. He's not listening to Tim. He really thinks he's Batman, and he thinks he's like, I call the shots attitude. And like he knows better than the guy who's supposed to be training him. So we getting like some issues with John. Now, Bruce is, in a wheelchair recovering. Some goons show up at the home of Tim Drake's father while he's getting treated by Sandra. They end up getting kidnapped by them. And despite Bruce's attempt to subdue one of them, he ends up getting his butt kicked. And they end up getting away. But one of the goons left his mask, which Bruce ended up using to analyze to lead to where these guys are and what their plans are with Sandra and Drake. Now this happens in another story, I think maybe in Knight's Quest. So gotta wait till then to see what is going on. All the while, Bane has been telling all these other gang leaders or mob leaders to bend the knee, and one of the top dogs, this dude named Tough Tony, expecting everybody to bend the knee to Bane, and they all look bewildered like, dude, you never bend a knee to anybody. As long as we knew you always the toughest dude in town. Despite anybody trying anything, this is so weird. Then John Paul Batman burst in with Tim behind him. Tim trying to do his thing, but expecting, because he's used to working as a team, as a dynamic duo, but John is not in that, mode. He just like, he might as well have just been doing this solo. And he makes this excuse like I knew you was there. I knew you was capable of handling yourself. As a matter of fact, later on, he points out to Tim, like, you've been complaining to Bruce about how like you want more responsibility and you don't want to be, like handheld and all this other stuff. So now that you have it, I'm giving that to you. Now you're complaining. But it's just like, I see his point, but that's like a stark difference from giving him room to breathe and just not working together at all. There's like a happy medium. So now it's just like they got Tough Tony cornered, and this dude is literally about to toss this guy over, and Tough Tony explains that Bane has my kids. If I don't bend the knee and convince the others to bend the knee, he'll kill them. And of course, John ain't trying to hear all that. He doesn't give a crap, at this point, Tim is kind of playing like an idiot, because I would have immediately, after the whole chainsaw situation, I would immediately go to Bruce and it's like, yeah, this is not going to work out. This dude, I had to stop this dude from chainsawing a dude's head off. Like, our attempts to try to curve whatever mechanism that the Saint-Amand is putting in his head since he was a child it's not, our method is not curving that, and it's only getting worse. We cannot have this dude on board, but Tim's not doing that. He's like, kept telling like, we can't do this. When it's not us, man. It's not us. It's not how we do things. And it's like, dude, how many times are you gonna say it? Clearly, it's not getting through. You need to put a stop to this. And of course, Batman's not in any shape to, do anything. But, Tim and Nightwing is still around. He's in Bloodhaven, but you can call him up and both of y'all can like subdue this dude, because he doesn't have the same capabilities with both of you guys combined. Sure, maybe one-on-one with Tim and John might be comparable to Tim, maybe a slightly more, but you can increase your odds of subduing this dude if you work with Nightwing. But Bruce analyzed the mask, realized the person wearing it was treated for all kinds of, like inoculations for various things like malaria, and there's only a few places that requires you to take certain these shots, and one of them was Santa Prisca, where Bane, was from. So he figures, okay, they must took Sandra and Drake to Santa Prisca. So him and Alfred, gather their things to take a trip to Santa Prisca to save Sandra and Drake. But of course, he's not telling Tim because he doesn't want to worry, and he needs to focus on John Paul and Gotham for right now. But he leaves a note behind after he leaves. And of course, Tim doesn't know until like a little bit much later. So John Paul, little by little, started making alterations to his costume. And he's starting with these, metal gauntlets that shoot batarang shuriken. Because despite his hand-to-hand skills, he still doesn't have the same capabilities as Batman. Like throwing batarangs in like a very accurate way. So he's like, I can cut the middleman and just use these gauntlets and just shoot them in like a hyper accurate way at the place that I want. And he got these like metal sharp, like spiky hand gauntlets and everything like that. And it's only get progressively more spikier of the suit, which we'll get to. So he plans for an ambush to where Tough Tony pretends to bend the knee to at least tell Bane that he convinced the other mob bosses that they're willing to bend the knee to him so they can bring his kids out. So he can plan an ambush. Now, as Bruce and Alfred board a private jet, Selina ended up showing up because she was planning on taking like a plane to Santa Prisca for her own plans, but everything was all booked up, and they figured like, oh wow, Bruce is not sure if like at this point in time her and Bruce actually know each other just yet. Doesn't carry on like they had like a history at this point in time, so they definitely don't know each other's secret identities. But she tried to worm her way onto the plane, but they tell her to kick rocks. But then she sneaks on board anyway, and then when Alfred tried to use the lavatories, she's like pretending like, oh, I'm sorry, I had to use the facilities, I must have fell asleep. I was like, that was like a lame excuse the writers could have came up with for Catwoman. They could have just let her just own it. It's like, yeah, I snuck on board because I really need to go. So now that we're in the air, you might as well take me. Then I can be out of your hair. It could just disown it. That's how I could picture Selena just playing it that way, because it doesn't need to go through this rigmarole. But whatever. So John Paul jumps in without any kind of strategy at all. So Tim, trying to catch those kids so they can avoid like the firefight, Paul figures like, hey, like I knew you had those kids, so I was worried about that. I just need to take down these goons, which he does. He takes down Krog, Bird, and Zombie. And they're held up in police custody, which they're not giving up any information on Bane. So he goes to Gordon and just adds to the idiocy of Gordon, who worked with Batman long enough and supposed to be a good detective, commissioner for God's sakes, not, telling, at least by maybe vocal cadence or the way, he's moving. Like if Ben could do it, he definitely should be able to do it. It's like, yeah, you're something's off about you. I can't put my finger on it, whatever like that. Especially after this moment where he's explaining, what was it? The city detention center over. You tell them where like those goons are being held up for interrogation. But then he turns around and he's shocked that Batman's still there. It's like, what? Oh my God, you're still here. I thought you had left. And it was like, John Paul Batman is like, why would I leave? Didn't think he was done talking. And it's like, oh, well, it's like, it's just, that should have been like your big clue right there. Because more often than not, Batman, like, if he feels like he got enough, like halfway through Gordon's sentence, as soon as he turned around, he's supposed to be dipped. This should have been a big clue. Like, yeah, you're not him. That is just odd. And it's like, I do not like when they playing, when certain writers playing Gordon like he's like a complete idiot, and he's not. So Jean Paul plans to pretend that Bane is hatching a plan to break him out. He signs a note, wears gas mask, and he throws in like some knockout gas at the police, so that way he can lead the trio to escape. And they all run back to Bane and praise him like, thank you for like rescuing us. And Bane's like, I didn't plan your escape. I wasn't even considering it. And then he thinks for a second like, oh, you idiots. Then John Paul Batman bursts in, knocks out the trio with his metal gauntlets, and for like, I'm going to take on Bane. He's not supposed to. And then Bane knows he's a pretender. He keep calling him pretender. And then they end up getting into a fight, and he getting his, John Paul getting his ass beat again, despite his gauntlets. But he's shooting him out, and he ends up cutting at the neck of Bane. But Bane ends up getting away. But the fight is definitely intense. But, at this stage of the game, John Paul is not really like up to snuff to take on something like Bane. But he ends up getting away, and now John Paul is like, telling Tim like, maybe the city needs somebody darker than Batman. And I feel like I'm the one that's it. And Tim's like, you're going to end up being like Bane. You can't, do it that way. And, like, clearly he's not listening. And clearly, Bruce made a mistake of dealing with, or at least underestimating, the psychological issues that John Paul is facing given that brainwashing thing. So he ends up calling up Nightwing, which is the only time he's showing up in this freaking story, which is kind of wild to me, because at this point in time in the 90s, Nightwing didn't have his own comic. So he's just in Bloodhaven, and of course, you would think if they needed a Batman, they would have called up Dick to, hey, I need you to take up, because you was literally trained for this. You was my first Robin. So the mantle clearly is ideally, you're the right fit for the job, more so than this newcomer from a completely ridiculous cult. That's just kind of crazy. But Tim is beseeching to Nightwing, like, look, you need to come in and help us out. This guy is, he's not like a team player. He is like, Nightwing's like, did Bruce, said he can, do this? So like, you got to trust him. Like, but it's like, no, this is like, I would say it's not bad writing. It's just like, this is the kind of thing that Nightwing or Tim would see this as like a good thing, given the red flags that's coming about and more are springing, and they're completely ignoring it because, oh, Batman said so he must have a good reason. But more often than not, yes, but clearly there's some added X factors here that clearly would, Bruce has overestimated or underestimated the programming of this guy he's been through. And secondly, he's not, both of y'all understand that he wasn't already up to, 100% and running on fumes as it is. So his decision making is pretty much off kilter. So you can't really rely on that at this point. Which, once again, Tim never bothered to tell Bruce before he ended up leaving that, yeah, we got an issue with John Paul, but I guess he's too concerned about Bruce's health to have him constantly worry about Gotham if this is carrying on, and he'll be desperate to try to do something about it, even in his condition. And it's like, well, you got freaking Nightwing. Like, he's more than capable. It's kind of weird. Even to this day, when like the Justice League is like temporarily out of commission, the first thing you will think will be on like the first plan if something happens with the League, get the Titans, people who or normally like the sidekicks of these heroes, to come step up. That's what they were supposed to be trained for, to be the next generation of Leaguers for the future. They still to this day really don't apply that, despite the many occasions where something happened with the Justice League and no writer decides like, okay, Nightwing need to take the place of Batman, Superboy, take the place of Superman, Raven, Beast Boy, Cyborg, Starfire, all you guys step up. Y'all the next row. Aqualad, either one, come in. Miss Martian, come on in. But no, they really don't do that. It kind of bugs me to this day. So now we get this glorified action figure, which in the 90s was cool. I'm not going to lie. A lot of people, including me, had like an action figure of this as a little kid. But that's all it was. It's pretty much like a glorified action figure to sell on the markets for kids. So now it's like Iron Batman with spikes. So now he figures like, okay, I'm more prepared, because that's what he built when he feels like the gauntlets wasn't enough. I need something that I can, full protection, so I can get the strength that I need, the speed that I need, like, all the necessary things that I can just pretty much shortcut my way to Batman level, or I can still feel like I'm better than Batman because I didn't need to do all that extra training and stuff of that nature. I won't be broken or beaten by this dude in a full tank, essentially. So Bane goes to Zombie in the holding cell. It's like, okay, I'm wounded. I need my venom. Where'd you keep it? So he ends up Zombie tells him where the stash is at. Doesn't bother to assist in their escape. Doesn't really give a crap. Because I guess he feels like, hey, you get taken out like this multiple times. Like, I don't feel like I need to help you guys. You guys are losing, in my opinion. So last slide. Now Bane is got his supply of venom. He goes to like whatever office that controls like billboards and stuff like in the street, because it's pretty much like New York mixed with Chicago. And it's pouring rain at this point, and he keys in the sign saying like bring it on Batman or something like that. So Jean-Paul Batman shows up in the middle of the square, and him and Bane have this third round slug out fight. And we got the detectives and cops, waiting in the wings far away. And it's pretty much like, let them fight. And one of the cops has like a sniper shot on Bane, but Kitch is like, under the instructions of the mayor, it's like, we're not to interfere. If push comes to shove, if something happens to Batman, then take your shot. But right now, the mayor says, let Batman do his thing. So they pretty much like a gladiatorial arena where these two are just slugging it out. Jean-Paul setting off these shurikens and bedding him in Bane skin. So it's like, it's not gory, but it's brutal. It's a brutal beatdown. And of course, Bane does not recognize him as Batman because he keeps calling him Pretender. You're not really him. I already beat him. I own this city. And there's this funny little line where where it's like Bane's like, I got this city in my pocket, and John Paul Valley was like prepared to be mugged. And I was like, okay, that was a pretty good line. That was a good, that was a pretty good line. Good retort. So they start, just mollywopping each other. Bane is juicing up just to, get one over and just to overpower Batman. And John Paul used his little claws and slice up the tubes where it's feeding Bane the venom. So now Bane is back to normal size strength. And the fight ends up, he ends up running away kind of like a punk. And he runs on one of the trains, and John Paul follows him. Of course, Robin's showing up because Nightwing ain't bothered to like stick around to try to help. Don't know freaking why. And so he sees like, this train has commuters that's been running to one end of the car, and Robin breaks away the derailing train. So now it's just like John Paul and Bane fighting in one of the lead cars that's colliding in one of the off the rails into one of the buildings, where now Bane is battered at this point, and now John Paul staying over him. Bane's like, kill me, I lost, you must finish me. And everybody's breathing a sigh of relief. Oh, thank God he's not killing him. And John Paul Batman's like, the police will take care of the pieces. And Tim was like, yes, that's he did it. And this particular volume ends with like pretty much Tim giving us his sign of approval, like, oh, like I'm not approving of how you do things, but you didn't take a life, so like you're how you put it is so dumb. Uh, you have earned, you have earned it, earned the right, earned the costume, new or old, and I guess you are the Batman. Thanks, kid. Shut up. No, he's not. All the red flags that's just screaming this guy is clearly not okay. And of course, in this point in time, John Paul has been like the Batman for like, quite a bit of time around this point in the 90s. Not crazy long, but long enough to where we see like a bit of descent. So now when Knight's Quest comes around and Knight's End, he's like, okay, this guy's not all there. You're not supposed to do this. Blah blah blah. Okay, I want to give my criticisms of this story because even though this is one of the best Batman stories of all time, my biggest criticisms here is like the useless subplots that go nowhere. The certain decisions made by certain characters, like Tim not telling Bruce that okay, something's off about this guy, and Bruce not immediately calling. Yeah, he thinks like, oh well, Nightwing's handling his own thing. He's his own man. He wouldn't want this, and Nightwing's like, yeah, he's right. But I think you can make. They didn't bother to even attempt it and make the excuse or have a discussion about the fact that okay, it's some extenuating circumstances with Bruce being laid up. They need a Batman. I'm going to help out. I'm not going to take on the mantle of Batman. I'll just be Nightwing, and you can Robin and Nightwing work together to deal with the ordeal going on with Gotham for the time being until Bruce is up to snuff. That way we can like curve the situation with John Paul. They could have done the useless little villains, this one-off villains like Metalhead and stuff like that. Like I said, they could have just utilized, because it is a good idea that Bane breaks out these villains and each one put Batman through his paces. Don't waste too many issues dealing with these guys. Like Firefly should have been one single issue. Dealing with Poison Ivy should be one single issue, or even less than. But Ventriloquist altogether was very useless. So you didn't really need him if he wasn't going to serve any ultimate purpose. And when you do see these villains that probably be useful, they should add something for Bruce to ponder. Like these villains probably know him to a certain degree to where they have some kind of, words of wisdom behind their evil machinations. And just like there's other comics like this epilogue with Anarchy and Scarecrow, I don't think was very needed. Could have took that out altogether, because there was like another little, I didn't put it on the list of slides, but it was this, I'm pretty sure they had an idea for a Two-Face. Oh, we forgot Two-Face. We should put him in here, but we already reached a certain part of the story, so we're just tossing it in like a tie-in in between him getting his back broke up, and giving the costume to Jean Paul. About like it's like, okay, like you might as well just not have done it, or just thought ahead a little bit about what villains you want to use. But of course, it's like there's a smarter play here. This entire event could have been a little tighter, because there's a lot of useless little subplots that's tossed in here that didn't add much. But the whole concept of the Arkham stuff breaking out, it could have happened earlier, so that way you can see Batman dealing with all these little villains in these one-off little not one-off stories, but it's just like as you're reading this event, it's just like one night he's dealing with Scarecrow and Joker, another night he's dealing with Riddler. Another night he's dealing with Firefly, and then that thing he takes him down. And then one night he's dealing with Poison Ivy, he takes her down. And it happens like that. It shouldn't drag it out because most of these doesn't need to be dragged out. This is serving like a particular purpose, and the story needs to be tight. There's useless filler, as I would put it. And just like stupid decisions made by certain characters. And it seems kind of like not there's smart writing here, but every so often you come across certain decisions seems like kind of out of place for a particular character. Anyway, that was Knightfall. Great story, very important event in the Batman mythos. But let me know what you guys think in the comments below. What you think of Batman Knightfall. The next comic I'll be reviewing will be Knight's Quest. So look forward to that. And that shouldn't probably take as long as this one did. Like, my God, there's a lot. And yes, I included Vengeance of Bane because I might as well. Wasn't going to let that be separate video. I might as well include it in this because it leads right into it. But anyway, I'll see you guys tomorrow with a couple of new reviews. Take care. Have a great night. Peace.